Warm greetings, Code Monkeys and fellow VEDSies, and welcome back to CodedLockFilms. My God, is it that time already? Man, I never used to understand what my parents and my grandparents were talking about when they would say that time just goes faster and faster as you get older. I get it now. I definitely get it now. Oh boy. Well, let's just go ahead and crack on. As per usual, I'm beginning VEDS with a commentary. It's sort of become tradition at this point. And this is a video I had some reservations about in the making and planning and writing stages because, you expect this to some degree or another with anything, with any kind of video you make when you're the sort of person who is in the business of critiquing Disney films, particularly classic ones. But, you expect a certain amount of blowback and a certain amount of negative feedback just by the nature of criticizing Disney and Disney films. And I wasn't as worried about this one as I was with other projects for a couple of reasons. One is that the Hunchback of Notre Dame is, it's certainly popular and it's beloved amongst the Disney canon, and rightfully so. Like I've said, it's a good movie. Really, my issue is just that it could have been a lot better than it is if they had just tweaked a few things. And and that's always kind of a hard line to walk, is making criticism that where you can get across what you're trying to say in terms of how something could have been better while still acknowledging that it is good. And so that was one reason I wasn't as worried about it, is that The Hunchback of Notre Dame, while it is beloved, it's not really one of the most intensely beloved Disney movies, like The Little Mermaid, which I'll get to in a minute. But the other reason was that this was not slated to be kind of a recap, more humorous, jokey style video. It's kind of got this more sort of video essay format, which I thought was kind of the right way to go for the stuff I wanted to say and the points that I wanted to make. And I feel that kind of video tends to get a little bit more leeway, because you're not as perceived quite as much as making fun of something, although there are a few jokes in here. I knew that I had this idea for a while of, rather than just kind of going from Disney sequel to Disney sequel at random, I should start doing things sort of as units, as a particular topic, like pick a topic and kind of branch out from there, where I can essentially pick a Disney sequel that I want to talk about, and then I can talk a little bit about the original movie, either as its own video or at the front of the Disney sequel review. I'm sorry about that. Oh my goodness. I'm just getting over a really, really nasty bout of allergies that I've had over the past week. It's just been horrible. But, what was I saying? Oh yes. So, I would have kind of the Disney sequel, the original movie, in many cases the multiple Disney sequels that I could talk about for a particular property, as well as I could do a couple of Disney ripoff collection videos and kind of make a theme, make a topic, a unit out of it. And I thought that The Hunchback of Notre Dame was a good place to start because, first of all, I can do this sort of little video essay on the original Hunchback and the major problem that I have with it. And then I can go into The Secret of the Hunchback, which is the next one that's coming up. And that one's actually filmed. I just haven't finished editing it. And I'm sorry. And the Secret of the Hunchback, I think, is going to be definitely very entertaining, because it's a terrible movie, but it's really kind of funny, and actually I think intentionally so. You'll see what I mean when I get into the review of it, but it's very it's a very fun one. And then after that, I'm going to be talking about the Hunchback of Notre Dame 2, which I think you may be surprised by some of what I have to say about that, but that's I think all I'll say about it for now. But then after that, I'm going to be talking about what I think is really the worst of the bunch. I can't remember the title of it off the head. Well, the title is just The Hunchback of Notre Dame, but it's I can't remember if it's the Golden Films. There's several studios that were well known for doing these sort of movies that tried to sort of piggyback off the success of Disney. Golden Films was one of them. I think the one I'm talking about is by Golden Films, but I honestly can't remember off the top of my head. Might have been Golden Films, might have been Good Time Entertainment. There's several options. But that one is easily the worst of the bunch, and and you're going to see why. But the one thing that's kind of interesting as a point of comparison for all of them is that they all kind of, to one degree or another, have these sort of themes of internal versus external monsterhood, societal acceptance, in some ways dealing with physical handicaps, and they all deal with that to one degree or another. In particular, the last one I'm going to be talking about deals with that in let's say some interesting ways. I love Clapon, by the way. I love Bard characters. And I don't know if anybody noticed this, if anybody caught this, but I try to find little subtle jokes in the editing, and right there where I say the phrase tonal flip-flopping, at that exact moment, Clapon is flipping the little flaming stick. Those kind of things are just for me. And actually, in terms of editing, this video was quite the challenge, because I was incorporating these. When I first started putting it together, I just had myself talking, and I found that it didn't have like a great sense of flow. It was long periods of just talking and talking and talking, and it was feeling really dull. So I ended up deciding to put some background music behind all of that talking. But the challenge with that came in blending the background music with the talking, and then fading it in and out properly with all of the video clips where I actually do need to have sound present for this video, and that kind of thing is not the easiest in the world. It's very, very difficult to edit that stuff together in a way that does not feel very, very jarring. And so this movie was, this review was one that I had to spend a lot of time fine-tuning, but I think it came out pretty well. But anyway, the lens of those themes is kind of the lens through which I've chosen to look at the Hunchback of Notre Dame. And there are a lot of different ways you can look at it. A lot of different lenses through which you can look at this, the Hunchback of Notre Dame as an intellectual property. Another interesting way to look at it is through the lens of adaptation, because there's actually a long and storied history of adaptation from the original book, and in it's been adapted for the stage in many different forms. It's been adapted into other written forms. It's been adapted into a lot of movie forms, whether they be animated or live action. And you'll actually find that the Disney version is not really an adaptation of the original book. Of Victor Hugo's book. It's really more of an adaptation of later interpretations of the story. But I chose not to look at it really through the lens of adaptation. I just I thought that was going to kind of muddy things up in a way that I didn't really need to, and also because Matt does does a lot of the adaptation stuff, and I don't want to step on his toes too much. But another lens that I'm not really planning on looking through this movie, this series rather, is its portrayal of the Romani people. There are definitely a lot of problematic aspects to the way that the Hunchback series as a whole portrays the Romani, and but I'm really not very well educated on that. I'm not particularly well versed in it, in that culture and the history in that, and anything that I did in that regard would be very kind of surface level, and that seems like something that's really more important than that and deserves more than a surface level examination. So I probably won't be talking about it much through that lens. I'm sorry for anybody who was kind of looking for that, but I don't think I'm the guy to look at that. I felt more comfortable talking about those kinds of aspects when I did the Disney knockoff Pocahontas review, because American history is obviously something that's much more close to me in terms of my education base and my my own personal and cultural history. So I was a bit more comfortable talking about it in that regard. But when it comes to this series, I just don't think I'm the guy to talk about that. So I probably won't be examining that much. But in terms of this video, I really did agonize over this one a lot in terms of the writing. I think that this one, I think the script probably had about 5 or 6 drafts, which is considerably more than I usually have. Usually my scripts have like sort of 2.5 or 3 drafts, and this was one that I ended up, I moved stuff around a lot. I shuffled it around a lot. It originally was had a lot more humor and jokes in it. And the more that I refined it, the more that it sort of took this video essay form. And what I hope is that it's still it's still an engaging video. Because when you're making a video that's almost kind of more scholarly, you run the risk of it being a little dry. And I hope I haven't made a video that's terribly dry. I think that I've done the best that I can to make the whole thing interesting and compelling and fun to listen to, and but I guess that's up to the viewer to decide. And I will say that the other thing that did worry about is that the fan base on this movie is smaller, but it's a very passionate one, and it tends to. I've seen a lot of people say that who have grown up in abusive households or abusive situations relate very strongly to this movie and to Quasimodo in particular, and I absolutely understand where people like that are coming from, and how that kind of life experience puts you in a mindset where you have a much greater relation to the main. You relate much better to the main character of this movie, and as such, you're much more likely to really get into it. And I absolutely am trying to be respectful of that kind of thing. I was fortunate enough to grow up in a very supportive home and family life, and as such, like your life experiences color pretty much everything in terms of the media that you experience, and that's why I really tried to emphasize that this is a really good movie. Well, this is a good movie that could have been fantastic, and I've tried to be as respectful of that as I can. And again, it's sort of up to everyone else to decide how successful I've been at that. But in terms of upcoming units, because I talked a little bit about that at the beginning of the video, after I finish up my kind of unit on the Hunchback of Notre Dame, I'm going to either be looking at Aladdin or The Little Mermaid. Aladdin obviously has its two large sequels. There are a couple of entertaining knockoffs out there for Aladdin, and and there's also, of course, the Aladdin television series, which I need to track down and watch as much of it as I can, because I do want to address the Aladdin television series when I do that. And then there's the Little Mermaid, which will definitely be getting a revisit of the Little Mermaid 2, because there's some stuff I need to be clearer on to provide a bit more context. There's the sequel, Ariel's Beginning. There's also a television series of that. Hopefully I'll be able to find that as well. Some of those Disney television series can be kind of hard to find these days. And what else? I'm not sure. I think there's one Little Mermaid knockoff, another one out there that's relatively well known that I haven't covered. I think there's more than just the one that I already did. Which I do not get enough opportunities to use that away sky creatures line. I love that line so much. But I'm kind of leaning towards doing Aladdin first, if I'm honest, because I'd like to get a bit more of this unit style thing under my belt before I attempt The Little Mermaid, because The Little Mermaid, it's there are movies that people love, and then there are movies that people attach entire portions of their identity to, and The Little Mermaid is definitely the latter. And so that's always a particularly noxious hive to kick over, so to speak. But we will get to that when we get to that. I'm a little bit over time here, but I hope everyone enjoys this year of VEDS. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I will see you tomorrow.